Discovery Channel's decided to go to the Northeast to Cape Cod, and they started a series called Harpoon Hunters. Today, I have Captain Joe and Captain Niko. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning. Doing very well. Glad to be here.
Doing
Great
well.
to have-
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. I want to start off with you, Captain Joe. The first question I got to ask you is this: how are your kids doing?
Thank you very much for asking. Back a couple years ago, two of my three children got diagnosed with limb-girdle muscular dystrophy type 2C. It's an ultra-rare form of multiple muscular dystrophy, and there's only a small handful of children in the United States that are affected by this disease. So my wife and I stopped what we were doing. I stopped fishing for a couple of years, and we started a foundation, the Dion Foundation, and we raised money and awareness, and we're trying to fund the first ever in-human clinical trial for it's a gene replacement therapy. So my older boy is having a hard time walking upstairs, and unfortunately, it's just going to keep getting worse unless we can get a gene therapy for him. It's sooner than later. So we're fighting every day for him, first and foremost, and secondly, we're back on the water fishing. So we're going harpooning and trying to support our families at the same time.
Joe, how's it feel being back on the sea and harpooning tuna?
It feels great. I mean, you'll see. I was a little rusty at the beginning, but I think I got my rhythm towards after the first couple of days of fishing, and it was good to strike again.
Captain Niko, the question I got to ask you is this. You got to fill some big shoes, man. Dad was the guy that everybody looked up to. Now you're that guy. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, so my father was always our captain, and unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago. And it just so happened that he passed away at sea fighting a giant bluefin tuna. So as far as the way that he would have wanted to go, that's definitely how he would have wrote the last chapter of his life. But as far as the responsibility of me stepping up and becoming captain, it's a big one because the crew that we have fishing with us this season, we're all guys that worked with him and all guys that he taught how to fish and all guys that he trained. So they expect the same level of results from me that we had with him. And I don't want to give too much away, but I feel like I did a pretty good job stepping into that role and filling those shoes. So, but you'll have to tune in to see exactly how good.
Actually, you did a pretty good job. I was watching that first episode. I was enjoying that first episode. It was interesting
Thank
that
you.
you guys are competing against each other, but at the end of the day, it seems like you talk to each other about what you caught and how much you get per pound. Joe, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's only 70 ton that we're allowed to catch a year, and there's about 30 guys fishing for that. So we're all competitors, but it's really important to form an alliance with certain people that you work well with. So Niko's one of those guys with us, and if two boats working together is always better than one boat by itself. So we're all competitors, but you work with a certain amount of people, and you're able to do better than your rivals.
Speaking of rival, Niko, I know you got that plane up there, but who's this guy that keeps sneaking up behind you guys and trying to follow the plane and follow you guys? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Joe. That's not me. That's
Okay,
Yeah,
Joe.
so I don't want to. You'll have to tune in, but it gets heated out there, So you'll have these schools of fish, and when you have a school of fish you're working on, if someone else tries to come in and steal that school, it can get heated and tempers flare, and you can definitely get you can exchange some not so kind words here and there.
I can imagine. Niko, I thought it was very interesting the way you guys measure the fish. I think the biggest one I saw was like 86 inches. How big can they get?
So The legal size for us to be able to retain a bluefin is 73 inches. And even though that's a huge, 200 to 250 pound fish, these fish get so big that from 73 inches to 81 inches, that's classified as a medium. Okay. So these fish get up to 1,000 pounds. And my biggest fish this year was 116 inches. So they get huge, and I mean, I'm 6'3", and there's a scene where I lay down next to a fish and I look tiny next to this giant, 700-pound bluefin. So they get absolutely massive.
Speaking of 6'3", how's your head bumping against the in the boat?
It's funny because fishing on the Easy Does It. It was my father's boat before it was mine, and my father was 5'10", so he fit in that wheelhouse nice and snug. Whereas I kind of have to hunch over and tilt my head a little bit because I'm not your typical sized fisherman, so I don't fit in a lot of boats. So I make do though. We make it work.
It seems to me like you could have done a really good job with either the Philadelphia Eagles or the Rams as a lineman. Definitely.
Well, I'm actually when I'm not fishing, I'm a professional strongman. So I lift heavy things and put them down in my off time. So, which is also a huge advantage when you're pulling in 1,000-pound fish. There's strength's never a weakness. So let's go.
What's interesting too is this. They always talk about you guys are out there fishing and they talk about startup and innovation and all this other stuff. But you guys on your boats are entrepreneurs. You don't work for anybody but for yourself. You're out there fighting every day to make a living, to support your families. Talk about that and the love of what you do. Joe first.
Yeah, so you got to be passionate about anything you do in life, and fishing and harpoon fishing is definitely a passion of mine and pretty much every harpooner out there. When we electrify, when we harvest these bluefin, we dispatch the fish instantly, so they don't suffer, and it makes the quality of the fish that much better. So when you catch a fish in other ways, they build up lactic acid, and the value of the fish goes down. So the way we get them, and generations before us invented the electric harpoon, but it's a very efficient way to harvest these fish, and we're only allowed a small amount of quota. So,
Niko,
it's
yeah, I mean, I think to sum it up, in one sentence, is it's a way of life. It's true freedom, and there's no other way that I would want to go through life than on the ocean. The worst day fishing is better than the best day on land.
I like the idea of true freedom. I really like that. That's the coolest part. I've been speaking with Captain Joe, Captain Niko. Captain Niko's will be playing for the Eagles next year as a starter. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Blend. Joe, before we go, give us a website we could go to for your fund.
Yes. Thank you for asking. It's the dionfund.com. Or excuse me, the dionfund.org. The dionfund.org. You can check us out on Instagram, social media, all that stuff. Anything we can do, anything you guys can do to help, my family greatly appreciates it, and other families in the country, because we're leading the charge for all these kids that are suffering from this disease.
Niko, how much can you deadlift?
My best deadlift is 971 pounds. So, yeah.
I'm gonna leave you with that.
I'm one of the best deadlifters in America. Absolutely, man.
Guys, thank you again for joining us on Morning Blend.
That's why he's my friend. I gotta keep him on the good side.
I hear you, Joe.